views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
The following audio is via a Skype call.
Welcome to the transformative show, We Carry the Light, with host Dr. Susan Allison, the show that inspires you to find the light within and shine your light in the world. Who are you right now? And who do you want to be? What is it that makes you happy, helps you feel fulfilled, and living your purpose? Tune in and let Dr. Susan help you discover that you carry the unique light that only you can shine. Now, here is your host, Dr. Susan Allison.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to We Carry the Light. This is Dr. Susan, and thank you so much for joining us. I always am so appreciative of you. And recently, Dr. Pat, who is the head of this network, told me that I am 8 points from the person who is number one, who's been on the show for 10 to 13 years. So thank you. Thank you, all of you listeners, either listening live or to the archive shows. I appreciate you so much. And before I forget, this is kind of sad, but I want to remind you that my show's moving to just once a month on the second Thursday, still at 10 a.m. Pacific. So I was just speaking to Benny about this, that it's a little sad to me. I'm not going to have a weekly show for a while, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But for the next month, in March, I will be having my show on the 10th. And I'll be co-hosting Dr. Pat's show next week on the 25th, and every last Thursday of the month, again at 10 a.m. So for those of you who listen religiously each week, and I know there are lots of you from your emails and calls, and I just love you so much, please know I'm still here on the second Thursday of every month, bringing you inspiration for transformation. Also, as many of you know, I've just launched my latest book, You Don't Have to Die to Go to Heaven, and I have been traveling to many cities and speaking and promoting the book after all the work of writing it. So my need to go to once a month is that I need to drop back and regroup and to recoup. I need to recoup my energy. And at some point I may go back to a weekly show, but for now, this is what I need. So I also have you check in with yourself every week, and what is it that you need? Do you need to listen to your own body, mind, and spirit through your intuition? We can do it, in fact, right now. If you can, if you're not driving or in somewhere unsafe, I'd love for you to stop, take a breath, and close your eyes. And if you can't close your eyes, you can still do this. I'm asking you to check in with your heart, which means it's a long way for some of us, but it means traveling those 18 inches from your head to your chest, taking your consciousness and just moving down to your heart. If you can, maybe put your hand there and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And just let whatever words come just bubble up. How am I feeling about myself? And how am I feeling about my life? And just let whatever needs to come up, whatever it is the truth, let it surface. And as I often say to you, the very first step is to stop. You can even say stop, look, and listen to what's going on inside you. In this case, we're listening to our very, very wise intuition, which is that voice inside that always tells the truth. So, as I say also every week, we have the perfect guest based on what's going on for me and probably many of you, which is asking yourself those very, very, very deep and important questions. Questions like, who am I and why am I here? As always, our guest is perfect, as I say, and this one is as well. Who's been helping readers listen to their intuition and live fully in the present and create transformed and fulfilling lives. He is Dan Millman. He's the author of 17 books read by millions of people in 29 languages. He teaches worldwide, speaking to men and women from all walks of life, including leaders in the fields of health, psychology, education, business, politics, sports, entertainment, and the arts. He lives in Northern California, and his website is www.peacefulwarrior.com. Today, we'll be talking with him about his new book, The Four Purposes of Life, Finding Meaning and Direction in a Changing World. So, Dan, welcome to my show.
Well, thanks, Susan. Glad to be here with you. And only one slight update. 2 years ago, my wife and I moved to Brooklyn, New York. That's where I'm speaking from. If you hear any sirens in the background, that will add authenticity.
Wow, Brooklyn weren't you in the Bay Area?
From Marin County, California to Brooklyn, New York. Yep.
What is there a reason that you can share on the air why you moved?
Sure, I can share 3 reasons, which is 2 daughters and a grandbaby.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Nothing like being a grandparent. I have 4 grandchildren.
Oh, how great.
Yeah, no, It's great. So I'm glad you're close to your family. I know it's one of the values you talk about in your latest book, and that it's a value for many, many of us on the planet.
Well, it's relevant because so much of what we'll talk about in terms of the 4 purposes of life deal with real, everyday life, where we are.
Very true, very true. I loved your book years ago, Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And it was interesting in this new book to read about how long it took you to get to writing that book. And I was stunned by how many jobs you had, how many paths you took. And I kept reading. And I think it's inspiring for readers because it's like, wow, that happened to Dan Millman. I can do this too, because many of us have maybe not so many, but have a similar path that it took us a while to get to our calling. So I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, in fact, friends used to say, Dan, what are you doing this week? So it was a winding path to finally finding my career and calling.
Exactly. Now, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share a bit of this personal history with listeners. I know that you were a college athlete and coach, and you went from that to now being a famous writer and inspirational speaker. So we have an hour, so we don't have hours to talk about it, which we could have. But can you give us a synopsis of how you got here, like your own path?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I sort of came alive in an odd way when I was about 10 years old, jumping up and down on a trampoline. Who would have guessed that would have led to everything else? But I just followed my heart. I really did. And whatever interested me, I did. And then that led to a college scholarship. And when I was a young gymnast and a coach at Stanford in gymnastics, I was focused on how to create talent for sport. And that's a long story, but that gave way to another search because outside expanded beyond the walls of the gymnasium into daily life. And I started asking, what qualities can we develop? What skill sets that create more talent for living, for the actual challenges of everyday life? And that question led me really on a decades-long search, working with various mentors, life experiences, trainings, and so on. And it eventually led to an approach to living that I relate. My introductory book, of course, is Way of the Peaceful Warrior, but it led to an approach to living I call the Peaceful Warrior's Way. That really touches on all our lives because I view everyone as a peaceful warrior in training, in the sense that each of us is searching, we're longing to have a peaceful heart, but there are times we must acknowledge that we need a warrior's spirit. And that's essentially what started me teaching in the way I do, which has been for really 3 decades now. And after 16 books, they say you teach what you need to learn. I must have needed to learn a lot. So after 16 books, I'm just finishing my 17th and one of my final works, I think, now. But one of my most recent works puts together the pieces of the puzzle that helps make sense of the variety of different books I've read, and that is, of course, the 4 purposes of life.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it very much. I felt like you pulled a lot together from your previous works in this book. And I think as we get older, that's what we're doing, aren't we? we're synthesizing, we're figuring out, pulling it all together and making sense of it in a way that's clear. And that's what you've done in this book. You've sort of, it's sort of like a fine sauce that you've made, Dan. A reduction sauce where you just keep stirring and you're reducing it down to these 4 chapters.
I love that analogy. That's a beautiful metaphor, reduction sauce, yes.
That's what you've done. And I'd love readers to get your book. And I mentioned your website, and I'm assuming they can get your book just about anywhere in bookstores and Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Is that right?
Of course, in any form, audio, electronic book, and of course the print book is online and in bookstores as well.
Good. So for those of you who don't have it, please get this book. It was a wonderful read. And as I say, synthesized a lot of what Dan has been doing for 30 years. So tell us about this book. Tell us about, the title, the 4 purposes, a short description perhaps of these purposes.
Sure. And one way I would relate this whole idea of, the title, the 4 purposes of life, a friend of mine said, well, Dan, I know the purpose of life. He said it's learning to love. In other words, whatever the question, love is the answer. And that sounded pretty good to me. I couldn't argue with that. Another friend said, wait a minute, isn't our purpose here awakening, enlightenment, realization? Isn't that what human beings are here to do, to realize their oneness with consciousness? Well, that sounded pretty good, too, to me. Another friend said, wait a minute, our purpose biologically is to reproduce, keep the species going. All of them made valid points. But just as we divide the points on a compass into 4 primary directions and the days of the year into 4 primary seasons, by looking at our lives through the 4 purposes that I outline in the book, it helps us to shed a light along the path and clarify what we're doing here and what we're here to do. It very clearly does that. So in summary, just to provide a context, remember I mentioned sirens, by the way? You can probably hear it in the background.
I can.
Right on Flatbush Avenue here in Brooklyn. In any case, the 4 purposes, simply put as a list, are learning life's lessons, and there's a lot more to that. The second purpose is finding our career and calling and understanding the difference between the two. The third purpose is the most mysterious, and it involves finding our life path, those hidden drives, qualities, strengths, and hurdles we're here to overcome on our individual life path. And I clarify how to find that, and I'll clarify that for your listeners, a very quick way to do that. And the fourth purpose may be the most important one of all, but let me hold off on that one until we get to it.
Good. We'll surprise everyone.
Yeah.
We'll keep it for then. I really liked your first purpose very much, which is learning life lessons, because I had a spiritual teacher once who said this is Earth School. In fact, she told us that we were in spiritual graduate school, and that basically she shared with us very much what you are sharing in that first chapter. So say a little more about this, about Earth School, and that our daily lessons, that we're in a classroom where we're learning.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And in fact, maybe for some of it's graduate school, but sometimes I get the feeling it's reform school as well.
I agree with you. When she said that, I knew she was trying to make us all feel great and herself as well.
Yes, could be kindergarten, but wherever we are and feel like day to day, we have all noticed that lessons tend to repeat themselves until we learn them, and that if we don't learn easy lessons, they get harder or more dramatic. First life throws a ping pong ball at us, and then a bowling ball. So that's there's a message therein to learn the easier lessons. Now, what I mean by this, it sounds kind of mundane because we all know, we learn from our life experience, but what I'm suggesting is, like your former teacher, that the earth is a perfect or divine school, that daily life is our classroom, and that daily life is guaranteed to teach us everything we need to learn in order to evolve as human beings. What I'm really saying is no one needs to read my book or other books or attend seminars, mine or anyone's, in order to continue to evolve, because people were evolving before books and seminars.
right.
But you might well ask, well, wait a minute, Dan, then why do you teach seminars and why do you write books? Because good reminders can be extremely useful. It can help us to learn the lessons of everyday life, which we're inevitably going to learn, with a little less pain and maybe save us a little bit of time along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you also address 12 areas in that book. You talk about the importance of self-worth and self-discipline, etc. And I liked that. I liked how you broke it down into those arenas. And I think that the self-worth one, it's something that we're learning constantly, isn't it? It's something that we're working on. I keep thinking of an onion. We keep peeling the layers and peeling the layers in terms of what it is we need to do to change and evolve and become, I call it becoming divine humans, but we're raising our energy. We're becoming better humans on a daily basis is what I like to say.
Yes. Well, we certainly are aligned in that idea. And when I mention these 12 areas, the reason I said it puts the pieces of the puzzle together, I wrote another book, which was Warner Books put out years ago, called Everyday Enlightenment. And it covers in detail, very great detail, all these 12 areas. But the thing is, this is kind of maybe a bit fascinating to your listeners. It certainly was to me. I had a recurring dream in my life, and the reason I mention it is because nothing's more boring than hearing someone else's recurring dream. But many of your listeners very likely share the same dream, and you may recognize it too. I dreamed that I was having a very important exam, like a final exam, maybe in high school, maybe in college, but I couldn't find my way to the exam room. I was getting lost in the dream. But even more common, the way the dream turned out, I realized, I wake up in the morning and I realize, oh, I've got a final exam today. Oh, my God, I forgot to attend the class. I forgot I signed up for the class. I never went to class meetings. Now I've got a final exam. This is a common anxiety dream, and many of your listeners might recognize they've had a dream similar to that. The reason it's deep in the human psyche, is because that describes our human condition. We're getting tested every day in one form or another, and we don't know what classes we signed up for. So in relating these 12 arenas of life, you mentioned beginning with Discover Your Worth, we get clear on what courses we're actually taking, and all of us are enrolled in these courses. They're not optional. They're required courses. And so obviously we don't have time to go in detail through all 12, but the self-worth one is the reason I list it first is because it deals with a very fundamental idea. It's nothing to do essentially with self-esteem. We've all heard about self-esteem. Yeah, it's nice to feel confident and good about ourselves, but that's fairly surface. That's at our conscious level. We know our level of self-esteem in any situation, but self-worth answers a deeper question. How good of a person am I on a 1 to 100 scale, or how much do I deserve of life's blessings? Because that's how much we're going to get. Ramakrishna once said, if an ocean of abundance and bliss pours down from the heavens and we're only holding up a thimble, that's all we're going to get. So it allows us to start saying yes and opening up to life and avoiding self-sabotage, which is related to this. A certain lack of self-worth results in self-sabotage. There's much more to say, but that's why the area of self-worth is so important to understand.
I agree with you. And I agree that, I am still working on this, and I think we all are. I have a friend who said, when is this going to be over? I'm really tired of it felt like circling the drain or cycling through this onion layer analogy, and just saying I'm just sick of it, but I feel like it is Earth School, and there is sometimes, or more than just sometimes, there's another layer. And, and I have been uncovering layers lately. I feel like sometimes we have core beliefs that we're dealing with, and they go way back to childhood, or they go way back to when we were much, much younger. And one just surfaced for me in the last several weeks, another core belief to sort of take apart and dismantle and move past so I don't sabotage my life based on that core belief. So anyway, I loved how you set that up, that chapter. I thought it was wonderful.
Well, one core belief is, beggars can't be choosers. Many people live like that. Another one is, well, I can enjoy things and have some of life's fruits, but I have to work really hard and suffer for it. These are all beliefs that are unexamined by many people. And in fact, it reminds me of a story of a young gymnast I was coaching at Stanford years ago, decades ago. And I walked into the gym, and he was stretching his leg. Picture him lying on his back with one of his straight legs, pulling it toward his chest to get, really flexible. And as I walked by, he was going, "Oh, this hurts so much. I hate this." And I turned to him and I said, "Who's doing it to you?" and some of us live that way.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I like that story that you shared in the book. Mine that surfaced recently is I have to be perfect to be loved. And I'm really looking at my perfectionism and being really hard on myself and having to do things a certain way and having to do them not just well, but absolutely perfectly. And so I thought that I was done with that, but it has surfaced again. So I'm taking it apart and dealing with it. Yep, that's what we can do. So your second purpose, I loved your distinction between a career and a calling. Tell us about that.
Well, the reason it's important to understand the difference is we're told things or we read things like, do what you love and the money will follow. I even told my daughters when they were young, do what you love and get someone to pay you for it. And this is good advice, but it's a bit idealistic because sometimes you do what you love and you don't get paid for it and the money doesn't follow, because doing what we love is pursuing our calling. And that's wonderful to have a calling, something, whether it's a hobby, a recreation, a sport, playing a musical instrument, whatever it is, something we just love doing. We're not even sure why sometimes. That is our calling. And what our career involves is producing an income. It's a very basic human need and skill. And we may love our work. It may give us a lot of perks. But if we weren't making any money doing it, we'd have to find something else. So to understand the difference helps these starving young artists who don't want to, quote, unquote, sell out. And they say, I have to practice my guitar all day to become a real artist. And meanwhile, they're living in their parents' basement maybe, and they would do well to have a day job. Even part-time, to get some independence and stabilize their life, and then they could practice their calling in their discretionary time. In the same way, there are many people who are quite successful. They make a good income, but they've rejected what they used to love doing when they were younger because they can't justify it to themselves since it doesn't produce an income. So it's important to recognize the importance of both a career and a calling, and to know that sometimes they combine into one. A calling, if they get good enough, can become a career. In my case, my calling and career are the same. And by the way, I've been asked, how do you know if your career is also your calling? Easy to answer. If you won the lottery, would you keep doing it at least part-time? If you would, it's your calling. If not, it's a job. And so understanding that helps us to get clear on the bigger picture. And then, of course, I go into the importance of self-knowledge in terms of making good decisions in life about our work and even about relationships.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I really wish that people who are just starting out, young people, could, hopefully they can read your book now when they're 17 or 18, because I agree with you that many of us do something we feel we should do as opposed to what we truly want to do deep in our hearts and our intuitions. And I like what you say. You say, until you find your career and calling, just get a job. Meanwhile, stay open to new opportunities. Great advice.
Right.
Dan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, again, we call them the trying 20s, because in our 20s we try this, then we try that, then we try that. I know I did.
Yeah.
And the reason self-knowledge is so important is because if we don't really know ourselves, and it takes time to do that, you can't graduate from college assuming you have full insight and self-knowledge. We have to test ourselves against the world, sometimes for about 10 years before we start to get a sense of, really, who am I? What are my values? What are my interests? And what are my talents? we sometimes have to find out what we don't want to do before we discover what we do want to do. And that's probably true for you, for me, and for many of us. And so if we don't know ourselves, we end up making the right choice for the wrong person, the one we thought we were.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. I was just thinking about my own life when you were saying that. And I don't think anything is wasted, though. I feel like, and I don't think you do either, that every single, it's like little breadcrumbs, every single one led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. I love that. I think there's nothing wasted.
I do emphasize that in the epilogue of the book, Finding Our Spiritual Purpose, which is that wherever we step, the path appears beneath our feet. We can't really be lost, even though it may feel like it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It feels like it because as humans, I mean, we do not like feeling like we're in limbo I talk to my clients about being on the bridge. You're on a bridge right now, and they're not sure yet what is on the other side of the bridge, and they're stepping along. And I think that's hard for us as humans.
Well, I think that's so true. In fact, I just came across a quote the other day by Joseph Campbell. He said, "You must give up the life you planned in order to have the life that is waiting for you. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's."
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. And yet, it can be scary. It's like for some of us, we want, my husband was always saying, you want to see outcome. You want to see what, is ahead before you take your next step. And you just have to trust. You just have to have faith and then take your step. And he was absolutely right. But I think that for those of us who are less secure or wanting something more linear out of a desire for safety, that can feel scary.
Yes, so true.
Feel scary for some of us. So we do need to take a break. This is the only break we're going to take during this interview, since I want every minute I can have with you. But we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back with Dan Millman.
Put a little woohoo in your life with Keys. Keys Clear Protein Waters have 22 grams of smile-making, attitude-adjusting protein in every bottle. Did I mention its tongue-tingling taste? Not just another guilty pleasure. With Keys, you'll enjoy every low-sugar sip and freedom from gluten, lactose, and GMOs. Who needs the fountain of youth when you can find Keys on Amazon or at Keys, Kees, please.com. Put a little woohoo in your attitude with Keys Protein Water.
A word of caution: if you prefer the status quo and you are not interested in improving every aspect of your life, this book will trigger the shift out of you. The Truth is Funny, Shift Happens is available now. Author Colette Steffen brings the powerful knowledge and life-changing energy and empowerment from the radio airwaves to the pages of her new book. To get your copy in paperback or ebook, visit thetruthisfunny.com today.
Shine On Radio. Find Your Shine with Kelly is the show that celebrates what makes you, you. Join co-hosts Kelly Wadler and Dr. Pat Basili as they break down how to brilliantly fuel and move your body and love what makes you shine. Kelly is a professional arts and wellness coach dedicated to helping brilliant women find their confidence, energy, self-love, and shine. Tune in to Shine On Radio with Kelly and find your shine on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Hi, I'm Leslie Fontaine with Sheer Alchemy on Transformation Talk Radio, and here's your tip of the day. When it comes to positive thinking and the law of attraction, many of us could say, been there, done that, read the book. So what happened if we didn't get there, didn't achieve the goal, didn't step into our abundance? Typically, there are some core wounds and core fears that keep us from stepping out. We also have energies in our ancestral lines, our cultural and family codes, and even agreements that keep us in check. So let me challenge you. When you had the desire that burned in your soul, what happened? How did discouragement set in? Why did you stop? What came up for you? Whose voices? Listen, there's hope, but it does not come from suppressing the energy that's within you. We all know it's going to spill out somewhere. So join me on Transformation Talk Radio and Sheer Alchemy, and we're going to find out how we can shift you into the intentions that can manifest for you.
What is a Master Soul Gardener? With Nomi Bahar, you can be one too. Her revolutionary Gates of Power method is a comprehensive program that addresses every aspect of yourself and gives you the tools to tend to the seeds of your soul's garden. Let Nomi guide you through and beyond what's holding you back and help you embrace the life you've always dreamed of. To learn more about upcoming classes and workshops, visit gatesofpower.com today.
You brought my way. You gave to me your all in all, and now I feel 10 feet tall and sunny one so true. I love you. And sunny.
Welcome back, everyone, to We Carry the Light. This is Dr. Susan, and I'm here with Dan Millman, who is the author of The 4 Purposes of Life, Finding Meaning and Direction in a Changing World. And Dan, we've been talking about your second purpose, about career and calling. And is there anything else you want to say about that? Any wisdom for listeners about their career and their calling before we move on?
Well, the book gives some very useful tips. There's an exercise in there called Time Travel, using our imagination to make wiser, more fully educated decisions. But I think overall we have to understand it is a process. We can't rush it. Joseph Campbell also said that sometimes those who decide on their career very early on rise to the top of the ladder only to find out it's leaning against the wrong wall. And then they make career changes as they get older. So we really have to trust the process. As long as we stay attuned to what feels appropriate, I think everyone can make what feels like good money to them while doing what they enjoy and find suitable, while serving other people. And all 3 areas are important.
I agree. I like how services is the last one that you mentioned. And I feel lucky, too, like you, that my calling and my career are the same and have almost always been. And I'm thankful to 2 teachers that I had that were so inspirational. I knew that I wanted to teach literature, and then I went into psychology from there because the literature I loved was very psychological in nature. And, you know, it's like that breadcrumb thing again, that one leads to the other. But I always have felt like I was doing what I love as a teacher at the high school and college level, then as a psychologist in private practice, and always writing poetry, writing nonfiction, and then became a songwriter and have 1 CD out and working on my other CD. And I feel it's also what brings us, our calling, you know, what brings us joy when we get immersed in it and we lose time. And, you know, it's like that child spirit is bubbling up and we're just so happy when we're doing it. That's sort of been the determining factor for me.
And that's my experience, too. But, you know, newsflash, I like to say to people, one doesn't have to love one's job. Again, as long as it feels suitable to your talents and interests and values to a large degree, you don't have to love everything about it or love it every day. If it happens to be your calling, you're going to love it more. But there's nothing wrong with having a functional job in the world that's reasonably, you know, okay. And at the same time, use discretionary time to really do things that you consider fun and enjoyable. It's a good life balance. Not everybody has to combine career and calling into one. It's not necessarily better. There are things about my work. I mentioned to you I've been in Japan recently. I'm going to London in about a week as we speak. You know, putting the luggage in the overhead compartment on planes and jet lag and all that aren't my favorite things, but they're part of the work I do. And I love being in front of people and sharing. So I want to be realistic and not idealize, you know, my work that, we can be blissed out all the time at our work. No, that's probably not realistic.
Very true. I'm so glad you said that.
Yep.
Because as I was heading towards the end of teaching, as I did finally leave teaching and was writing more full-time, I was going, knowing I was doing a good job. I liked it enough. And it wasn't, it was not all roses and all great, but it was good. I was of service. I enjoyed it. But I also think it's important to know when we're ready to leave something, which I think some of us perhaps stay too long.
I agree. In fact, that's really why I wrote The Four Purposes of Life, reaching out in particular to people in a transition, facing a transition, whether it's graduating from school, retiring, changing jobs, changing relationships. People in a transition are very open to learning, and this would be a very good timing for the Four Purposes of Life.
Yeah, transition. And many of us are in, it seems like, I like how your title talks about this changing world. Almost every guest I have talks about how fast the pace is, that it even feels frenetic sometimes, that things are happening so quickly, and that it feels like these changes and transitions are happening sort of more quickly for people. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's how people are feeling.
Oh, I predicted this over, like 28 years ago when I first started publicly teaching something other than gymnastics. I said that one thing we can agree on, the pace of change is accelerating. And that was 28 years ago, before the Internet, before our smartphones, before so much technology, and it's only increasing. And in fact, one of the statements I make in the book is, and it's very realistic, that life comes at us in waves of change we cannot predict or control, but we can learn to surf. And that's what I hope to do in the Four Purposes of Life, is to help people learn to be a little bit more skillful surfers on those waves.
Yeah, and that in your first purpose talks a lot about that. Life is going to keep happening, right, Dan? It's just, people. It's like my husband passed away 2.5 years ago. That was nothing that was expected, and it happened, and life continues to happen. It's like you just moved. And now you're going to be traveling. And, people come and go in our lives, especially as we get older. And so it's just going to keep happening. But if we can surf it, if we can handle, and some of them are huge, huge transitions and huge changes that we are asked to surf. You give people a way to do that that is more peaceful and more fulfilling in the process. But it's still going to keep happening.
Exactly. That's why St. Augustine said, I pray not for a lighter load, but for stronger shoulders. It's a matter of resilience because, as you say, life keeps happening. People can still get divorced. We're still going to suffer loss. Learning any of this doesn't make life suddenly easy around us, but it makes us better, more capable of working with it.
Yeah. Say the quote again from St. Augustine.
Yeah, he said, I pray not for a lighter load, but for stronger shoulders.
Yeah, boy, that's, I remember reading that in your book, but it's beautiful and it's so true. Sometimes, though, I get tired of it. I've always had super strong shoulders and been super responsible, and sometimes I don't like it.
Oh, well, I don't either. I don't think anyone does. We don't have to pretend to like everything that happens. There are times that adversity can come, and we roll up our sleeves. Recognize it as a form of spiritual weight training. If you don't lift any weights, you don't get any stronger. And one way to look at it, I think, somebody asked me, Dan, why does life have to be so difficult sometimes? And I said, would you like to know how to make life easy? I'll tell you. I can tell you the secret of that. Never maintain an intimate relationship or get married. Don't have children. Don't take on any responsibilities. Just live in a little trailer somewhere, maybe up in the woods, grow garden. The point is, are we here to make life easy? Is that what we're here on earth for? Or are we here to engage it fully? Now, granted, there are more efficient or easier ways to do something to avoid unnecessary pain and difficulty, but sometimes we appreciate adversity so much, we take on what I call voluntary adversity. People go, what do you mean by that? Well, for example, as I write about in Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and in the movie also they depict this dramatically, I shattered my right leg in about 40 pieces, my right thigh bone, in a motorcycle crash when I was a young man. If that hadn't happened to me, I doubt I would be here speaking with you and your audience right now. Yep. It shook me up. I started asking bigger questions about life. However, I do not recommend fractures as a method of personal or spiritual growth. But sometimes we actually volunteer for adversity. For example, sports. Anyone who's done a sport, that's a form of voluntary adversity. It's more difficult than not doing it. Same with learning a musical instrument or a new language. Same with having an intimate relationship or having children. All forms of voluntary challenge. Life is more difficult doing these things, but it creates a much stronger, wiser, clearer person.
Yeah, so well put. Yeah, I've seen that so many times in my own life. I've told listeners I just had a basal cell skin cancer taken off my shoulder, and I have the ability to do shamanic journey work, which I've done for 22 years. And I went in and asked what was going on, and I got stop, slow down. And then I just had a blowout on the I-5 going to doing a book tour in Southern California. And again, the message was slow down, stop, take a look at your life. You're going way too fast. You're doing too much. You have too many sort of, programs open on the computer of your life. So I feel like sometimes like you're shattering your thigh bone. I had this happen, 2 things happen in the last few weeks that gave me a very distinct message. So sometimes we don't listen and we get I call it the rubber mallet, or you get the hammer.
Yes. Well, I think you've made a very constructive use of some smaller or larger difficulties. I think we make up our own meanings about things, but it sounds like you looked at some very constructive messages from these incidents. Now, I've had a number of BCCs, on my skin, and the meaning I get is I got way too much sun as a young man. I'm reaping the benefits of that. But looking at it, taking, many people, when they get a cold, they start re-examining their life. I think that's quite a useful thing to do. What can I do to live cleaner, better? All these things are opportunities when we meet difficulty to what course corrections can I make? We can change a midlife crisis to a mid-course correction.
I agree. And I just listen to everything in my life in terms of messages about what is going on, just because I don't believe there are any accidents. I believe that everything that happens can have a very powerful message for us, no matter what. Let's go to the third purpose, because I had fun. I knew what my numbers were, but I had fun doing them anyway and reading the meanings. Talk about this mysterious purpose based on the number system, one's date of birth.
I'd be happy to. And before I get into that, to provide a context so your listeners might know if they're not familiar with the system, I would invite, if they're not driving, for example, they may be listening to this broadcast while driving, of course, then wait till they get home. But if someone is home, if they're in front of their computer, if they have their smartphone handy, they can go to my website, peacefulwarrior.com, and they will see a link on the left that says Life Purpose. If they click on that link, it will immediately take them to a free Life Purpose calculator. They just put in their date of birth, day, month, and year. They will immediately see a couple of numbers. That doesn't mean much to them at this point, but they will also see some words or ideas connected with each of those numbers, and there'll be about a paragraph, a teaser or a taste of their life path, which is the third purpose of life. And it gives a flavor for some core issues of their life. Now, I need to acknowledge that this system is a numerological system. I was never very interested in numerology personally, because it didn't make sense how adding up the numbers of your date of birth could possibly give valid, reliable, accurate information about some of the fundamental issues of your life. And yet, after working with it for 30 years, I was trained in this by a very unusual mentor many years ago. I think your listeners will agree, most people do, that it's really uncannily accurate. Yep. So people can check it out themselves at the website. There's much more to it. I mean, there's a Life Purpose app they can get for their smartphone, Android or iPhone. It's called the Peaceful Warrior Life Purpose app. They can get the book, The Life You Were Born to Live. But in the 4 purposes of life, I give a good summary of the meanings of each of these digits to give some quick insight into our life path. And I'll say one more thing about it to make sense to people. If we were to point to a tree outside, chances are there's not a single tree on the planet exactly like that tree in terms of every angle and of branch and leaf. And in the same way, each of us is unique. There is nobody exactly like us, not even an identical twin. Nobody is exactly like us. And yet, I can say things that do apply to birch trees that are different from redwoods or aspens or oaks. And in that way, even though each of us is unique, we are living on a certain pattern according to a frequency or pattern, which I call the life path. Mm-hmm. And that does apply to us. And that's a very useful tool of insight to help clarify the rest of our life.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that so much. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was really concise, how you put it all together in that for the 3rd purpose. And I'm a 2911, so that was really interesting and very, very accurate. And I felt very happy that Robert Downey Jr. also is a 2911. Yeah. And it was fun. It's a fun chapter because everybody loves sort of delving in and finding out things about themselves and traits. And for me, it's been very accurate. Thank you. And
not only Robert Downey Jr., but of the 43 different life paths for people born since 1900, you also have the same life path as Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle.
Oh, wow.
Whatever politics are, that's, and it has a lot of energy, a drive for creative solutions to problems. It could be in the arts, it could be in business or politics, and you feel like you want to prove yourself as well. That's been probably a driving force in a lot of your life, and very big-hearted as well, and a certain level of charisma that just goes along with that 9 energy. But rather than do a whole reading, it's just one life path among many. There's no better or worse life paths, just differences and different challenges, different gifts.
Yeah, remind me of your numbers.
Yeah, mine happen to be 268, so I have 3 digits. 26/8 would be the way my life path would be written, and each of those numbers means something and is a doorway to a lot of information to understand ourselves much better.
And you say that closest to the slash, so you would be, the 6 and the 8 would be important for you to look at.
Yes. All of the numbers are important, but that would be true, yes.
Yeah.
And again, your listeners can just check out their number and look at those key words that apply to their life. Yeah,
no, I love it. And you also point out, it's not negative things, but it's things to kind of look out for. Like the 11, you have the 2 ones, is also that there could be insecurity that you're overcoming your entire life, which has been true for me. Might have been true for Obama and Robert Downey Jr., who knows? But that was also accurate. And so I think that it's good that you pointed out all of it.
Yes. In fact, in the longer book, The Life You Were Born to Live, which deals, in a lot of detail about these life paths, I have a section, a paragraph for each life path of what it looks like when we're working that energy, let's say, in the positive, and also what it looks like when we're working it in the negative. Yeah. And that accounts for some very different lives of people working the same number, the same life path, but they're doing it in a more constructive or more destructive way. So it's important for people to understand both of those, because often we spend a little time in both.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. No, I thought that was very realistic and made sense. And I haven't read that book. I've read some of your others, but I'll have to get it so I can read in more detail. So let's talk about the fourth purpose. And
okay. Well, the reason I say it may be the most important of all, after people go through, and it's a small book, 150 pages or so, but it has a lot in it. So after they go through all the learning life's lessons, the 12 areas of life we're all working on, there's 12 courses, the career and calling, the more mysterious life path information, this brings people right down to earth in what's in front of them. We can always handle this purpose, which is attending to our purpose in this present moment. For example, we may not know our cosmic purpose and be able to articulate it, but if someone asks us, what is our purpose in this moment, we always know that. You and I know our purpose in this moment. We're having a conversation. Your listeners are listening in. So it really helps come back full circle to, that's fine knowing all this other information, but what do I need to attend to right now? Because life is a series of moments, and the quality of those moments, the presence we bring to it, is really the quality we bring to our whole life, because that's what life is, one moment after the next. Many times, we're not even living in this present moment. We're remembering the past. We are focused on the future, and we hardly are aware of what's going on right now. So that's why I've taken great care to articulate what it means actually to live in the present moment and focus on our purpose in this moment. And we can always handle that.
Yes, we can handle that. I like the use of the word arising. Attending to this arising moment, that's happening right now, that there is no past, it's gone, there is no future, it's not been born. And there have been a lot of books written about the living in the now, but I think it's become one of the most important things in my life, is because this is it right now, Dan. What we have right now is it.
I would totally agree. And the thing is, it for some people, they hear that as a slogan. They've read lots of books on living in the present moment. My book, Ram Dass, Eckhart Tolle, and so on. Many people have written about the importance of living in the present, and they hear that, and we all go, yes, it's good to live in the present. But until we realize the illusory nature of the past, what we call the past, as a set of memories, electrical impulses in our brain, but it's gone. And until we realize what we call the future, even 5 minutes from now, is just our imagination. It may not unfold like that at all. Things change. There's nothing wrong with using the human capacity to remember or to project our imagination into the future. We just don't want to mistake that for reality. It's just an approach to living. The only moment of reality is now, and when we realize that, we begin to invest more in this present moment and less in the past and future. That's why Mark Twain once said, I've had many troubles in my life, most of which never happened.
It's so true. This sitting around worrying, it's such a useless endeavor that we do. And when you think about what keeps people awake at night, I would say that 99% of it is worrying about what hasn't happened.
Right. Or what already happened, and we remember it, but we can't do anything about it. In fact, the only way I know of to change our past is to live constructively in the present, because our present will soon become the past.
That's right. In 12-step work, it's called a living amends. That you're actually, if you have regrets, there's something that's happened, you change it by how you live now, how you live in the present, making a living amends to yourself and to those around you. Exactly. So tell us can you share a bit about your next book?
Well, you ask an author about their next book, they'll either tell you too much or too little. And I'm at the too little phase. I can tell you the title. It's called The Hidden School.
The Hidden School.
It's the third and final book in my Peaceful Warrior saga, Dan's Adventures. And it's one of my more ambitious works. It's been challenging, but Jack London once said it takes hard writing to make good reading, to make easy reading. And I've worked very hard on this book. My daughter, who's also a writer, she's co-author with me of a writing book called The Creative Compass, one of the better writing books, I think, largely to her efforts. And she's now reviewing the book, and I'm sure I'll have more work to do after that. My wife already went over it. They're my first editors. And so anyway, the book will complete the Peaceful Warrior saga.
Good.
And I hope address some extremely challenging material, but putting it, that's my specialty and my love, is to put it in a way people really get.
I hear you.
For example, I'm going to see about resolving the issue of whether free will exists. So I'm telling you some heavy topics.
Wow.
But handled, and I'm going to clarify why free will is an illusion, but it also is real. How is that possible? And many other paradoxes. So
I love it.
That's
love it.
going to be only one small part of an adventure, but it's really couched in an adventure story. So I hope that wasn't too much, but that's the book I'm working.
I love it, Dan. That was wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. We are at the end of our time. It went very quickly, which is always true when it's a great guest, and you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for being here and inspiring so many people over decades.
Thank you.
And thank you, my loyal listeners, for being here each week, either live or listening to the archive show. I want you to know how very important you are to me, and please keep writing to me and calling, and tune in to the Dr. Pat Show or on Dr. Pat, thedrpatshow.com or Transformation Talk Radio next Thursday on the 25th, where I will be talking about being a soul shaman and showing you how you can be the shaman of your own soul.
You've been listening to The Transformative Show, We Carry the Light, with host Dr. Susan Allison, the show that inspires you to find the light within and shine your light in the world. Who are you right now, and who do you want to be? What is it that makes you happy, helps you feel fulfilled, and living your purpose? Tune in every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, and let Dr. Susan help you discover that you carry the unique light that only you can shine.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.